was that the Reformation really ruined it. Because the Reformation is what made two tribes stay with separate religions.
We are a very funny species because we are left rather high and dry. See, until 1800, the Act of Union, the Anglo-Irish, if you like to call it that, ran things at the Parliament in Dublin, which was then destroyed by that appalling bribe of Castlereagh, most iniquitous piece of political chicanery, and a few of us didn't agree to it. Now, suppose it had carried on, the old Dublin Parliament. All right, it was corrupt, all parliaments were in those days, but it would have been reformed and cleaned up. And I think now Ireland would be a very friendly, happy, independent neighbour of England if they just left it alone. It would have worked out.
County Galway, where the writer, the late Anita Leslie, lived. She was always at ease with her upper-class Anglo-Irish origin, but, like the writers at Coole, she acknowledged the influence on her of the native Irish, who were her childhood friends, at home in Glaslough, County Monaghan.
The servants taught such a marvellous language. You see, that one of the great differences of the Irish and the English lower classes is that the Irish have a vocabulary of 5,000 or 6,000 words, whereas the English, I believe, have only got 500 words. And so one caught from them this marvelous language and used words that were sort of unique and different all the time. Now, for instance, I remember when I went to Yeats's tower, I'd asked the woman who's showing me round, is the roof still leaking? It would baptize you, said the woman. And one knew exactly what she meant.
I believe myself that these playwrights, these Anglo-Irish playwrights, with Protestant background, got into their system this use of language so that they were able to, what you might call, dominate the English stage. And that language came from the people, came from the Gaelic conversational technique, which itself came from a tradition which was 2,000 years old and which hadn't been eliminated by the Industrial Revolution or by the various social changes in England, which really eliminated, one might say, the rich phrase from upper class language.
And then I can remember another time asking a man if he'd seen a fox in a wood. And he said, I see the flash of him at dawn. And one knew exactly what he meant. You didn't have to say more. And so one caught that oneself. And I think that we Anglo-Irish spoke much better English than our contemporaries in England.
This is Castle Leslie at Glaslough, County Monaghan, just a mile inside the border with the north, on the southern side. Anita Leslie's brother, the Honourable Desmond Leslie, lives there now in the family seat.
I'm an astrologer and an occultist, and I believe that there's far more design than luck. We just have to fit in the way the cards are thrown. I mean, I was doing very well in London. I was top. I was top in way out sound effects and music. I was making 6,000 a year. Now, 15 years ago, that's a lot of money. I was doing major films, and I had the choice, pack it up or take over this place. And I thought this place was more important. If I hadn't come here, I don't think this place would still be going. Leslie's tend to lose their memory, but it doesn't matter. It's usually when we're very old. We usually live quite a long time. Father was very absent-minded. I remember meeting him on the staircase. I was about 5, and he came and he said, "Hello, who are you?" And Uncle Seymour, my dear uncle, it was the first time he met his father, was in bed. He went into his mother's bedroom. He said, "Oh, Mamma, who is that gentleman in bed with you?" I said, "Oh, darling, I'd like you to meet your father."
Like so many of the Anglo-Irish families, Anita and Desmond Leslie divided their childhood times between Ireland and England.
We, you see, lived in London. This was my grandparents' house then. But I tell you, the world and the year began and was dated. From the day we went home to Glasslough in the summer, then life began, and it ended the day we got on that little train and went home to dreary old London, we called it. That was the winter of our discontent, living in London.
One earlier visitor to Glasslough was Jonathan Swift, Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral and author of Gulliver's Travels.
Swift wrote some very rude things about us. He wrote in the guest book, "Glasslough with rows of books upon its shelves, written by the Leslies, all about themselves," which is true today, as it was then.
The writing tradition in the Leslie family has persisted through the generations on subjects as various as theology, autobiography, travel, poetry, family history, fiction and science fiction, the world of the supernatural and the occult. Desmond Leslie himself is a writer influenced by his close encounters with the Irish otherworld.
I'm very much aware of the parallel universe or the spiritual world, whatever you call it. I think most Irish people are, from the first level, the leprechaun, the etheric, which is as valid as ours, up to a higher levels. In fact, my book, treasure hunt book, which I just finished, Find the Crock of Gold, is all about Irish fairies. It's these 2 lovely leprechauns whose job is to guard the crock of gold, where there's a rainbow. And they've had a very good idea. All they do is every time somebody comes along, they push the rainbow away. And that, in case you didn't know, is why the rainbow moves.
Desmond Leslie came to live in Glasslough on the death of his father, Sir Shane Leslie. In his early years, Sir Shane had been inspired by the crusade for a new cultural Irish nationalism, the literary revival movement. He took his stand as a home ruler against Ireland's union with England. It's said that at the time of partition, he asked for the border to be drawn just north of his estate.
Father, you see, was, as a young man, passionately involved with the new Irish movement, and he became a nationalist. He took the trouble to learn Irish. He spoke it beautifully. He could write verse in Irish. And 1912, he contested Derry, the Abercorn's safe seat, which they considered was their private seat. And at a recount, he'd only lost by 60 votes, which was rather a shock, you know, to the establishment, this wild young renegade almost taking Derry.
Although it was rare enough in the early 20th century for the big house to support the cause of Irish nationalism, through the 18th and 19th centuries, a few members of the Ascendancy had seen fit to challenge English rule in Ireland. For instance, Brett, the other a coachman's son, were among the leaders of the 1798 Rising. They were Lord Edward Fitzgerald and Wolfe Tone.
Among that ascendancy were many who had, if I might call it, a British sense of liberty. And they didn't like the way that Britain was treating Ireland, treating their own, what they had now begun to regard as their own people. So you get an Anglo-Irishman then like Wolfe Tone, who sees himself in the context of an Irishman living in a country with different traditions, and he wants to bring them together, dissenter and English and Irish, bring them all together in Ireland. Or you get Henry Grattan. I mean, Henry Grattan was an Irish landlord, and yet he stands up in the Irish Parliament and he says, I shall not rest secure while a single link in the British chain is clanking to the rags of the Irish peasant. He may be naked, he shall not be in Ireland.
Not be in Ireland. And though great men should apostatize, yet the cause will live. The immortal fire shall outlast the organ which conveyed it, and the breath of liberty, like the words of the holy man, will not die with the prophet, but survive him.
Well, I mean, that could be almost an IRA speech today. It was delivered in the Irish Parliament before it was closed by the English in, I think, 1799. So you've got the Grattans, you've got the Parnells, you've got the Wolfe Tones, you've got the Robert Emmets, all these people of English descent who are prepared to give up their position of ascendancy in order to have equality among their own people.
And the struggle for independence resulted in 1921 in the creation of the Irish Free State. Many of the Anglo-Irish decided to leave. They had ruled Ireland for centuries, and those Irish who saw them as oppressors and landlords living off the backs of the people were not sorry to see them go. But a few Ascendancy families did decide to stay.
After the creation of this country, I think the remaining families felt it was time they took a back seat, that they'd done their bit, which may be a pity. Maybe we still have something to offer, but I think the feeling is it's their turn. We had a good innings. Now it's the other chap's turn.
There's very few of them left, and the few that are left keep going. They're disappearing. They're like the dinosaurs. If you love Ireland, you love Ireland. It gives you a feeling, a sort of pull. How can you live anywhere else in the world? How could I live anywhere else in the world except Ireland? My roots have gone down from my toes into the soil.
People who live in a place put their imprint on it, for better or worse. And I rather hope we've put a good imprint here. It's rather nice to look out of the window, know that every tree here we planted at some point, still planting them. And Glasslough is a sacred lake. It's a healing lake. A lot of people have experienced it. It's a marvelous lake for people who are really broken up inside. You get into that lake and you get immediate peace. There are actually 6 big healing angels standing round it, but not everyone would believe me. When it got polluted and the algae came in, a lot was done on the higher planes to clean it up. We had a little word with the guardians of the lake, and they were most helpful. Algae went overnight. Now it's as clear as glass, which it always was, Glasslough. The green, glassy lake.